Hey everyone, welcome to World Wrestling Flashbacks. My name is Mike, and we're going to be talking about Season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring. Now, we had another video, Dark Side of the Ring Season 3 Details, where we talked about several episodes. We have information on 3 additional episodes, which we did not include in that video, so if you haven't watched that, feel free to check that out and come back. If you already watched it, welcome back, and let's dive right in. Some of the topics that we discussed in this video are of a graphic nature, so viewer discretion is advised. This first episode that we're going to be discussing is about Chris Kanyon. Born January 4th, 1970 in Queens, New York, Chris played basketball, roller hockey, and baseball at school. He later played rugby at the University of Buffalo, where he got his bachelor's degree in physical therapy. After college, he began training for a career in wrestling. He would eventually make some small appearances in the WWF, where he faced Shawn Michaels, Diesel, Tatanka, and Bob Holly. James Mitchell, aka the Sinister Minister in ECW, saw the potential in Kanyon and would eventually send him to both the Fabulous Moolah and Afa of the Wild Samoans for additional training. From 1995 to 2001, Kanyon would find himself at home in World Championship Wrestling. Upon entering WCW, he was in a tag team called Men at Work with Mark Starr before being replaced with Mike Winner. In 1997, Kanyon was repackaged as Mortis. He feuded with Glacier, the ultimate Mortal Kombat knockoff if there ever was one, and he would then be paired with Wrath. In 1999, he formed a stable called the Jersey Triad with Bam Bam Bigelow, the Beast from the East, hailing from Asbury Park, New Jersey, and Diamond Dallas Page, where they won the WCW World Tag Championships twice. In late 1999, he was repackaged once again as Chris Champagne Kanyon, where he was accompanied to the ring by his agent, Jay Biggs, and Nitro Girls, Babe and Chameleon. Man, the 90s were definitely a thing. By the time 2001 rolled around and WCW was bought out by the McMahons, Kanyon became a member of the Alliance in the infamous Invasion angle. During his time with the WWF, Kanyon held the WCW United States Championship along with the WWF Tag Team Championship. After sustaining 2 injuries, Kanyon was released from his contract. Following this release, Kanyon, Raven, and Michael Sander tried to sue the WWE over lack of healthcare and other benefits before the case was dismissed by a federal judge. In 2004, Kanyon stated that his release from WWE was due to his sexual orientation. He later stated that this was only a publicity stunt, but eventually he would retract those statements and publicly acknowledge his sexual orientation. In 2005, he appeared in Total Nonstop Action's wrestling pay-per-view Turning Point, and then Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Following the Chris Benoit double murder-suicide that absolutely shocked the world, Kanyon would appear on CNN's TV special Death Grip Inside Pro Wrestling, where he would go on to state that in 2003, he himself had taken 50 sleeping pills in an attempted suicide. Sadly, only a few years after that interview, on April 2nd, 2010, Chris Kanyon would be found dead by his brother. He was found with an empty bottle of antidepressants and an apology letter to his family. This next topic that we're going to be discussing for Season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring is Dynamite Kid, a topic many of you have commented on previously in our other video. We didn't want to disappoint. Born Thomas Billington in Lancashire, England, the Dynamite Kid began to develop a love for wrestling, boxing, and gymnastics at an early age. His father and uncle were both boxers, and his grandfather was a bare-knuckle boxer. Little fun fact, he was also related to a man named James Billington. Now, James Billington was a wrestler in the late 1800s, but he was also an executioner. Fun fact. Billington was trained by Dr. Death Ted Betley. He made his in-ring debut in 1975, and during these initial years, Billington would win the British lightweight title and welterweight title. In the late 1970s, he would move to Canada, where he joined Stampede Wrestling, owned by Stu Hart. While in Canada, Billing was introduced to anabolic steroids by the Junkyard Dog and Speed by Jake the Snake Roberts. Following his move to Canada, Billington would move yet again to Japan, working for both International Pro Wrestling as well as New Japan Pro Wrestling. The Dynamite Kid would have a legendary feud against Tiger Mask. Many credit these matches for putting this junior heavyweight style wrestling on the map. And in 1984, Dynamite Kid would make his move to the WWF. He would end up teaming with soon-to-be WWE Hall of Famer Davey Boy Smith as the British Bulldogs, one of my favorite tag teams. In 1986, Kid and Smith would find tag team gold at WrestleMania 2, where they defeated Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Later in 1986, during a match against Don Morocco and Bob Orton, Dynamite Kid would suffer a bad back injury which would require surgery. Unfortunately, this injury would lead to fewer matches and his run in WWF would be cut short. After leaving the WWF, Billington would go back to Stampede Wrestling and then All Japan Pro Wrestling. Before one tour of All Japan Pro Wrestling, though, Billington visited wrestler Dan Spivey in Florida, where the two would take LSD. Billington would come close to death twice, but was revived both times by paramedics. Dynamite Kid's story starts taking a bit of a nosedive at this point. Looking extremely thin and ravaged by years of drug abuse and previous wrestling-related injuries, Dynamite Kid would wrestle his last match on October 10th, 1996 at the Michinoku Pro event called These Days, looking much different than fans had seen him in prior years. He would end up having a stroke that very next day while at the airport. Eventually, Dynamite Kid would lose the ability to walk from years of back and leg issues. It's been stated that some of these injuries may have also been due to his signature diving headbutt, a move which is known to cause spinal problems and concussions, something we've heard about numerous times following what we know about the Chris Benoit situation. Besides being unable to walk, Kid also suffered from heart problems and would have another stroke in 2013. Unfortunately, Thomas Billington passed away on his 60th birthday. His personal life may have been tumultuous, but his impact on the wrestling industry can be felt to this very day. His body of work speaks for itself. Here's a list of all the championships, awards, and accolades that he won or was given over the course of his career. It's pretty remarkable. This is the plane ride from hell. Earlier this month, Jim Ross reported on Sports Media Podcast that he had spoken with Dark Side of the Ring creators for 4 hours regarding the plane ride from hell. Excessive alcohol consumption, sexual misconduct, and violence. These are the 3 things that make up the plane ride from hell. Following a grueling European tour and British pay-per-view Insurrection in 2002, a number of WWE talent, including wrestlers, tour managers, cameramen, and more, according to Just Incredible, were set to take off for the States in the 747 rented out by the WWE, something that happened quite a bit back then. Credible states that during these trips, it was not uncommon for the plane to be fully stocked and have an open bar. That sounds like a horrible recipe for disaster. According to Sean Waltman, aka X-Pac, aka the 123 Kid, a number of people were taking the sedative GHB, commonly referred to as a date drug. Some of the pranks on the plane started out seemingly harmless and childish as Curt Hennig and Scott Hall began tagging people with shaving cream. Later, Curt Hennig and Brock Lesnar would begin to have a tussle in the emergency exit row to see who could take down who. A great idea when you're on a plane. This would eventually lead to a serious competition of strength. One move by Lesnar would lead to almost hitting open the emergency exit door, as some of the plane have stated. This would eventually be broken up by Dave Finlay, Triple H, and Paul Heyman. Ric Flair would end up facing 2 sexual harassment charges when, as Sean Waltman puts it, Flair comes out in his robe, balls naked, strutting down the aisleway. In the lawsuit filed against Flair, it states he wore nothing but a jeweled cape, the flight attendant said, and flashed his nakedness, spinning his penis around. He separately grabbed each woman's hand and placed it on his crotch, and then forcibly detained and restrained one of the flight attendants on the plane from leaving the back of the galley of the plane while he assaulted her. Flair, of course, denies these allegations, but WWE settled this case out of court. Next in the hot seat is Dustin Rhodes, aka Goldust, who was also implicated in the previously mentioned lawsuit. According to one flight attendant, Rhodes said, "You and I are gonna Rhodes would then grab hold of the plane's PA system and awkwardly serenade his ex-wife Terry Runnels, who was also on the flight. Moving on to Scott Hall. There are conflicting reports as to what Scott Hall was doing on this flight beyond the shaving cream shenanigans with Hennig. Jim Ross, who was then the WWE's president of talent relations, didn't believe Hall was involved in any wrongdoing besides the shaving cream. However, those assault allegations name Hall as one of the wrestlers that was assaulting a flight attendant. Charming. He would then pass out on the flight to the point where talent thought he had died and would eventually be taken out of the airplane with the use of a wheelchair upon arrival at JFK Airport. Michael P.S. Hayes, aka Doc Hendricks, formerly of the fabulous Freebirds, one-time manager of the Hardy Boys where he tried so hard to fit in, just look at those pants, look at them, and of course Sheriff of Bad Street USA, was not so innocent on this flight. Sean Waltman claims that before cutting off Hayes' signature mullet while he was passed out, a prank that was seemingly backed by the entire talent pool on the flight, Hayes almost urinated on Linda McMahon. Linda McMahon! Bad idea. Hayes then reopened a gash on Bradshaw's head that he had got previously at that Insurrection pay-per-view by hitting a sleeping Bradshaw on the forehead after yelling, "Hey you fucking redneck." Obviously, Bradshaw knocked him out. Following the events of the plane ride from hell, we would see the releases of Goldust, Curt Hennig, and Scott Hall. In years following the incident, Dustin Rhodes would return to the WWE, eventually teaming with his brother Cody Rhodes, formerly Stardust. I'm not sure what they've been up to lately, though. Due to a severe drug and alcohol addiction, Scott Hall would hit rock bottom, seemingly never to return. Thankfully, though, he found help in the form of DDP, along with fellow Hall of Famer Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig. On February 10th, 2003, Hennig was found dead in a Florida hotel from acute cocaine intoxication, steroids, and painkillers. Hennig was just 44 years old. In 2007, Mr. Perfect would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame by his close friend and baseball player, Wade Boggs. Unfortunately, that's all we know about Season 3 Dark Side of the Ring. If you haven't watched Part 1, it's right there, as I stated earlier in the video. There's so many topics that can be discussed, whether it's in the WWE, ECW, New Japan, indie promotions. There's so many things that can be talked about. What do you want to hear more about? Let us know in the comments below what you want us to talk about, and we'll be happy to do the research. And if you're wondering where I got this War Tony shirt from, you can head over to our Pro Wrestling Tees shop. Link is down below in the description. If you haven't already done so, be sure to follow us on Instagram at World Wrestling Flashbacks, where we do loads of giveaways. Thanks for watching. Until next time. April 8th, we finally got the Dark Side of the Ring Season 3 trailer. It's right here. Enjoy.